gentlemen, we will we'll invite Mr. André Marin to the podium. Well, sir, I'll just take a brief liberty. I printed your bio and have to do a bit of an intro if you don't mind. Mr. Marin became the Ombudsman of Ontario in 2005 and was appointed to the second 5-year term in 2010. He's the 6th Ombudsman since the office was established in 1975. Along with responding to some 20,000 individual complaints a year and acting as closed meeting investigator in many municipalities, the office conducts systematic investigations using SORT, which is a response team, resulting in a dramatic government performance. The Ombudsman's recommendations today have been overwhelmingly accepted by the government. Mr. Marin was recognized as one of Canada's Canadian Law Magazine's top 25 influential lawyers in Canada, and has received a number of awards of excellence, accreditation, service awards. So without further ado, sir, thank you for attending here in Brighton. We certainly appreciate it. There have been a number of both members of council and citizens who have looked forward to being here this evening. So thank you so much for coming. Welcome.
Members of council and citizens of Brighton, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. It's always a pleasure to reach out to communities, large and small, and talk about accountability and the role of the Ombudsman's office. What I have planned is a short presentation, talk to you about 3 things, and then we can open it up to questions. First of all, we'll talk about the Ombudsman's role and function. Secondly, our role in closed meetings investigations. And finally, the impact of Bill 8 and municipal oversight in the future in Ontario. For those who may not be familiar with the role of the office was created in 1975. It oversees over 500 different government organizations, everything from OHIP to the LCBO to road trains. And as provincial, we oversee. And last year we handled 26,999 cases. 85% were resolved within a 2-week period. And we have a statutory mandate that ensures our independence of office and the ability to do our job properly. We investigate complaints and we recommend solutions, either individual solutions to those who may have individual issues with the government, or we deal with cases from a systemic point of view, looking at underlying issues. One of the examples that people are most familiar with right now is our Hydro One investigation, where we have almost 8,300 complaints, and we're investigating both on an individual and systemic perspective. The Office of the Ombudsman has very strong powers of investigation, including subpoenaing witnesses to testify under oath, compelling the disclosure of documents, issuing of subpoenas. The investigations are conducted in private as opposed to a public hearing, and we have no power to enforce our recommendations. We only have the power of moral suasion. Power of moral suasion is the ability to convince powers that be to change a decision, change an approach. In terms of our oversight of municipalities in Ontario, we'll talk about it in a moment. Council always rules supreme. We make a recommendation. This is how ombudsmen work all over the world. And it's by building, networking, and regular media, social media, outreach, participation tonight, for example, that we are able to reach out and talk about our work and cases that we've concluded. What we do, we teach all around the world, and of course called Sharpening Your Teeth. We teach it in Toronto. We bring it on the world scene to teach other ombudsmen how to elevate the bar. And it's a methodology we spread around the world. Just this morning I had staff from the Ivory Coast Ombudsman's office visiting our office and again learning from us. Now, with respect to closed meetings, the legislation was changed January 1st, 2008 to allow as an avenue citizens to complain to our office about council meeting in a closed meeting allegedly illegally. Before 2008, the only recourse was to go to court, which is expensive, and time-consuming. But the substantive law itself predates Confederation. The principle that council meetings should be open has not changed or evolved, simply an additional recourse being the office of the Ombudsman of Ontario. Right now, the law as it stands provides that anyone can complain about a closed meeting, and all municipalities have to have investigators. The number fluctuates, but out of the 444 municipalities, as of a few months ago, we were overseeing 191, now we're overseeing 195. It goes. Sometimes we get selected, sometimes we don't. The number goes up and down. Generally, it's been going up over the years as municipalities take notice of the quality of our work. Our findings and recommendations are made public. There is no penalty for breaching this legislation, simply that the Ombudsman can make a recommendation. Often the recommendation is, don't do it again, get educated about the law, we have a problem. What does the law say? Really, it is not complicated. Section 39 says all meetings shall be made public. That is the operating principle. And interestingly, the exceptions are not only exceptions, but they're not required exceptions. They're not obligatory. When may the meeting be closed? The operating word here is may. In other words, it's not the meeting shall be closed. So it is a situation where the exceptions have to be read narrowly and restrictively. And of course, the meetings must be closed for request under and feedback. What is a meeting? When is a meeting a meeting? We use a definition which is grafted on case law and precedent, accepted by our courts. It is any gathering of a public body that exercises the power or authority of that body and lays the groundwork necessary to exercise that power or authority. So, right from the outset, meeting in a corridor, meeting in your office, having a barbecue with colleagues, those are not meetings. Generally talking about council business, those are not meetings. When we're talking about meetings is when there is a meeting behind closed doors, the purpose of carrying out city business or laying the groundwork for that business. That is a meeting. And that is the definition we have been enforcing. So far, we have not been judicially reviewed. There's not a unanimous view that out there about what a meeting is, but that is the position our office has taken based on the principles of the Act and precedents in common law. We're a bit short on time, so let me give you one example of a meeting taking place outside a formal setting. This is the case of the Township of Nipissing, where through a series of phone calls, individual phone calls, councillors held city business in order to approve the invoice for a new fire truck. This is what we call serial meeting, where to circumvent a proper public meeting, everyone calls each other and they agree on the outcome of a solution and they pass it. We also had a case where a city council met in a closed meeting to give themselves a salary increase. Clearly city business, clearly kept in private to avoid the operating principles of the Act, having an open meeting. We did an investigation about Elton John going to Sudbury, in which City Council had been offered advance tickets, preferential treatment of all the other citizens, and that got out. And so City Council had a private meeting to decide, what are we going to do with these tickets now that it's become a political hot potato? Citizens complained to us, and we held it was not a meeting because it wasn't city business. It was more about how do we get rid of these tickets that have become a problem politically. Let's talk about Bill 8. Bill 8 is formerly known as Bill 179 prior to the election. It remains untouched, identical to what was proposed by the government before the election. Bill 8 proposes amendments to the Ombudsman Act to give us jurisdiction over municipalities, universities, and school boards, MUS. Those three letters represent $30 billion of expenditures by the province, for which there is little accountability beyond that. So Bill 8 would provide, in the case of municipalities, oversight over city council and the administration of the municipality, all aspects. In the cases where municipalities have opted out of closed meeting investigations and selected their own investigator, as in this case you have selected LAS, that would continue to be the case, but we would oversee LAS's work. So municipalities will have a choice to either keep the initial investigation in-house, if you will, using their own chosen mechanism, and we will keep an eye on those mechanisms, or municipalities will be able to opt out to simply not hire someone, in which case we will default as the investigator for closed meetings. This is the principle that will apply to every municipality, including the City of Toronto, which has its own ombudsman and its own accountability officers. The oversight of MUSH is a huge development. If you look back to 1975, from the first ombudsman to myself, for 40 years we've been asking the municipality to address this gap in oversight. Since 2008, when the province empowered municipalities to have accountability officers, 91.8% have not done so. I know here in the city of Brighton that you have an integrity officer, you have a code of ethics, and you've chosen LAS. 91%, 91.8% of municipalities in Ontario have nothing. There are 0 ombudsmen outside of Toronto, which was forced to have one. Several cities and municipalities who tinkered with auditor generals all ended up firing them, except for Sudbury. They tried to fire him. Now he's on a 1-year renewal. And Ottawa. So the really only one operating outside Toronto is in Ottawa. Bear in mind that for every penny spent by the province, there are 7 officers of parliament to oversee all those pennies. But when the province writes a bill to the must sector for $30 billion, this is what you get. Closed meeting complaints, they've been on the rise ever since 2008. You see there's a spike in 2012, 2013. That's because of complaints surrounding London, City of London. Briefly, a couple of bullets about how we work as an office. There is no charge back to municipalities, and there will be no charge back after Bill 8. We're continually correcting the record about stories that become urban legends. For example, last week in North Bay, a councillor said that it would cost each municipality $50,000 to $70,000. And the local media ran on it as if it was gospel, never called us. We have to go back and correct the record. There is no chargeback for the services of our office. We use methodology we've used for 40 years. It's proven. We're leaders in the field. We work as a last resort, always as a last resort. So we won't be going around investigating potholes and streetlights, and those are matters that hopefully will be resolved locally. That wraps up my bit of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer council's questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'll read the motion 8.1 so we can begin our questioning. Moved by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The Council receives the information from Mr. André Marin, Ombudsman of Ontario, regarding the services offered to municipalities by his office and the implications of Bill 179. Comments or questions? Councillor Vanderbilt.
Yes, you made the statement that you investigated some roughly 26,000 and change in cases in your office, and the question is, do you get involved in each of these investigations personally? Obviously that's a lot of work for one person, or I guess you're heavily dependent on staff.
Yes, we have 87 staff members, predominantly lawyers working in our office. I got involved in the systemic issues and the release of systemic reports, and we have about 6 or 7 of those a year. So yes, I rely extensively on staff.
Further comments or questions? Councillor Tatley?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. André Marin, one of the things that was discussed when this council chose LAS, which I was in favor of, is that the reports would maybe not be done timely because you'd be so busy. So what sort of length of time do you usually wrap up an investigation? I know some are more difficult than others, but what would be a reasonable time that you would consider when a complaint has come in?
Now, over 80% of our cases are resolved in 2 weeks. Now, when it comes to municipalities, it's a different kettle of fish because we have vastly different levels of cooperation. Some municipalities, for example, like Oshawa, tape, not only do they record their open meetings, they record their closed meetings. So we had a complaint about the closed meetings, the closed meeting that they may have had. The matter is very quickly disposed of. Either it fits within the exceptions or it doesn't. So we can be in and out of Oshawa, in a day. Someone raises an issue they met secretly on this day, send us the tape. Sister-client issues or another exception, open and shut case. Other cases, other instances like in London, we investigated a backroom meeting in London. We received very little cooperation. Everybody lawyered up. It cost the taxpayers of London nearly $100,000. We had to go and seize cell phone records. It was like extracting teeth. So that took longer. So sometimes we can wrap it up fast. Sometimes it takes longer. It depends on level of cooperation, but we aim to wrap these up within 2 weeks.
Councillor Gert?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions, actually, but I'll start with one. If a municipality elects to have an independent agency do this work like LAS, do you automatically then review every one of those cases, or how would you decide which ones you would give secondary oversight to?
Well, right now, of course, we don't review any of them because Bill 8 hasn't passed. Now, if Bill 8 passes, what we would be doing is we'd be looking at a more systemic approach. We wouldn't be there to second guess LAS. But give you an example, the investigative process would be very important. Did LAS meet with all the proper witnesses? Are the conclusions that LAS made, are they supported by the facts laid out in the report? Are there any issues of conflict of interest in the LAS investigation? So we've been more concerned about those kinds of issues. We've examined LAS's investigation just from an observer perspective, and we find them spotty. There are some good ones, and there are some that leave us wondering about the quality of the work. So I would say that the quality is inconsistent at this stage. They may be very well. Others are, I think, suffer from poor methodology. So those are the kinds of things we'd be looking at. It's not feasible as an office for us to go and second guess 444 municipalities' investigations, supposing everybody opted out. So it would just not be workable from a point of view of efficiency.
So what would trigger your review? Would it be an appeal against the LAS decision, or would you just be spot sampling various investigations to make sure the process was right?
It's an excellent question. Our act, our legislation allows for own motion. So it allows our office to go out and pick a case that we want to do even though we don't have any complaints. Since I've been ombudsman in almost 10 years, I've done that once with the Lottery Corporation. And it turns out that it was a good choice. So we are complaint driven as an office, even though we retain the ability to act on our own motion. And the reason why we were reluctant to use our own motion is simply because with 27,000 cases, complaints that come in, we don't need to look for extra work. And last annual report, our complaints went up 30%. The year before, another 30%. So our caseload every year is going way up just based on complaints. And again, we're very sensitive to the fact that, there are people that are, that thrive in the complaint world. You know, we have a provision in our act that allows us to dismiss vexatious complaints made with ulterior motive, and we always keep an eye on that. We certainly don't want to be exploited as a tool to get back other officials.
Councilor Martin?
Yeah, if Bill 8 does pass, could any person, like whether it's a councillor or a taxpayer, submit a complaint directly to your office, even if the municipality opts to take the LAS as a closed meeting investigator? So could, again, even if for complaints generally, and in particular for the closed meeting thing, if LAS was a contractor here, could a citizen complain directly to you and go around the LAS service?
In theory, yes, but in practice, we would push it back to the local investigator. You know, an ombudsman is an office of last resort. So, you know, if you have LAS hire and Bill 8 comes into effect, we would ask citizens to use LAS first, and only if they were not satisfied to then come to our office. Again, it's the last resort.
Understood. Council, one more question?
Certainly.
And I understand you're not from AMO, but could you describe what AMO is and what AMO's position is on Bill 8?
Well, AMO has made it very clear that they're opposed to Bill 8. They've said it many, many times, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. AMO complains that they were not consulted prior to the passage, the tabling of this legislation, Bill 8. I would argue that the government presented Bill 179, ran on it in an election, and they got elected. So I think every citizen of Ontario was consulted on Bill 179. And I think that's one of the reasons why it came back so fast as Bill 8. There's been a wide range of consultation. The Liberals use this as one of their platform issues. You know, I think that as an organization, AMO was self-interested. If you can live without having André Marin look over your shoulder, why would you want him? So in a sense, maybe I don't blame them. Maybe if I was AMO, I'd say the same thing. But I think we have to look here at the public interest, the fact that there's $30 billion handed over by the province to the bus sector, that municipalities collect taxpayers' money, and but there's very little accountability as we speak.
Can I ask one more question, or I'll wait?
Unless there's anyone else. Councilor Kerr, go ahead.
That'd be my final question. We've been very fortunate in this municipality that we haven't had any difficulties with closed meetings. Well, we've had a number of... Are you kidding?
Order, please.
We've had a number of investigations that do not involve closed meetings, but involve serious breaches of the code of conduct, and those being two separate issues altogether. Now, I shared a document with you when you come in and explained a little bit about that, where certain members of council met privately, made decisions with regard to an employee, and the remainder of council was not aware that this business was going on. And I just gave you that document because I would like your opinion as to whether that is the sort of thing that would constitute an illegal or improper meeting of council.
Well, without an investigation, I cannot comment on that, especially since if Bill 8 passes and somehow I'm seized with this issue. I wouldn't want to prejudge the outcome of our investigation. But certainly if your question is that the kind of issue that we could look at, for sure. I mean, Bill 8 puts no limits really on the oversight of municipalities, including the conduct of council. It's the best answer I can give you right now.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Martin.
Yeah, and it'll be my last question, and it's about recording of closed meetings. And it's been said that there's issues related to the legality of that, and we can't do it because it may be illegal. And what happens if the municipality is sued or it becomes a legal issue? What are the legal implications of recording closed meetings, as I am now, having a digital audio recording of a closed meeting?
I think if it does anything, is that it protects council. It protects the reputation of council. It protects the fact that council was law-abiding, and it allows, if it's going to be the Ombudsman's office, access to the record in order to be able to resolve the case quickly. You know, the issues of the exposure to legal suits and this kind of thing, well, the recording of a closed meeting would stay confidential within the possession of the city and would be covered by exceptions under FIPA. So it would not be accessible to third parties. It would be accessible to the Ombudsman's office, and we're all under oath, and it would go no further than our office, but to clear the committee of meeting rightfully in private. So I don't see any risk of any significance. I can see everything in favor of protecting the municipality, if anything.
Understood. Can I ask one more question?
Councilor Jordan?
Yes, just the lead on to that. So I understand you then the meeting would be recorded by the recording secretary or the clerk's office, but not by any other individual that was attending that closed meeting.
That's correct. And it would be kept apart from the city records. It would be available, for example, to our office if we had a complaint about that particular meeting. I'll point out to you that 5 or 6 municipalities are doing it, more are considering it now, including Oshawa. And there are, like I said, there are 5 or 6, and others are having discussions right now. It's not a lot out of 444, but you know, we've only been recommending that for the last couple of years.
Go ahead.
Just a follow-up then, so are you talking strictly audio recording or visual as well?
You know, audio would suffice. I mean, it's a closed meeting, so it's only a question of keeping a record of what was discussed during the closed meeting. And if there's an issue about, you know, why did you meet confidentially, there's a complaint, why was it closed to the public, just press play on the recorder for investigators, and we're in and out in the matter of the recording. It's unambiguous. It's not a question of he said, she said. We've recently had a case in Oshawa where we're in and out very fast, just for that particular reason.
So just an official record of the meeting process.
That's correct.
Councilor Martinello, final question before wrapping this up.
Okay, and I understand it's not related to this presentation, but it's related to things that have come up with Fontana and Duffy, I think, and it's called breach of trust in the criminal code. Can you describe what breach of trust is?
Well,
And again, if you can, I understand it's put on the spot.
yeah, well, you know, the one thing I can't do is give you legal advice, but, you know, I understand breach of trust. I was a prosecutor. I prosecuted breach of trust cases. It's when you have a sworn duty and you do something that's against your sworn duty, breaching the trust that the public gives you to carry on those public duties.
Understood. Thanks.
Thank you. So again, I'll just read the motion, if I can, moved by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Tabner. The council receives the information from Mr. André Marin, Ombudsman of Ontario, regarding the services offered to municipalities by his office and the implications of Bill 179. I'd just like to finish up with the fact that I believe Councillor Martinello covered my question in regards to comments coming forward from AMO, and I appreciate your answer on that. AMO was having some difficulties in with their claim of not being able to meet with this and discuss it further, but I appreciate your answer this evening.
Well, Your Honor and council members, I very much appreciated your questions. They were very engaging and thoughtful, and thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you so much.